the protest against the war, or the environmental movement, or even the feminist movement in other respects, is directed against power. And those are the kinds that didn't exist then. They've developed in the 60s. I mean, they existed to an extent.
You're saying there's more democracy today.
Well, there's on the one hand a lot more popular expression of democracy. On the other hand, it's less and less part of the actual institutions of the system. It's outside. And that's why you get these funny conflicts. I mean, I can see it in my own personal life. For example, over the last couple of years, the demands on me personally for, say, speaking somewhere have escalated beyond anything imaginable. I have to plan years in advance. And the audiences are interested and thoughtful. They reach out to parts of the population that you couldn't have talked to years ago.
If all this ferment is going on, if there is more dissidence now than you can remember, why do you go on to write that the people feel isolated?
Because I think much of the general population recognizes that the organized institutions do not reflect their concerns and interests and needs. They do not feel that they participate meaningfully in the political system. They do not feel that the media are telling them the truth or even reflect their concerns. They go outside of the organized institutions to act. And so on the one hand, you have a lot of popular ferment, a lot of dissidence, sometimes very effective. On the other hand, you have remoteness of the general public from the functioning institutions.
We see more and more of our elected leaders know less and less of what they're doing.
Yeah.
In fact, this medium does that.
Very striking. In fact, the presidential elections have been almost removed from the point where the public even takes them seriously as involving a matter of choice. Take congressional elections. Congress, especially the House, is more responsive to public opinion at higher levels. But even here, the rate of electoral victory by incumbents has been going up.
High 90s.
Yeah, high 90s. Well, that virtually is a way of saying that there aren't any elections. You know, it means that other systems,
you get
like
those
patronage
communists
and so on.
In a totalitarian
it means
state.
that something else is happening, not choice. You know, it means that options are not being presented. So on the one hand, so I think you do have a kind of a complex situation in the United States. There's a break taking place, a cleavage taking place between a rather substantial part of the population and elite elements. Well, that includes elite intellectuals, incidentally.
But that elite element is supported by a substantial part of the population. I mean, there are people who take seriously the debates, who go out and vote, who think that they're participating and believe they're participating in a legitimate exercise of democracy.
Yeah, it's not a cleavage of the point of revolution. It's not that you have a narrow, it's not as if you had an aristocracy facing a mass population. It's not Iran in 1979, nothing like that.
A lot of people are happy.
Sure, it's split and complex and fluid and so on, but I think you can see tendencies. You can see tendencies towards popular marginalization from functioning institutions and abstraction of those institutions from reflection of from public participation or even reflection of the public will.
Put that in vernacular. That means what?
Well, it means that the political system increasingly functions without public input. It means to an increasing extent, not only do people not ratify decisions presented to them, but they don't even participate, they don't even take the trouble of ratifying them. They assume that the decisions are going on independently of what they may do in the polling booth.
And they feel...
Notice that even ratification of decisions made elsewhere is a very weak form of democracy.
Ratification would be what?
Well, ratification would mean a system in which there are two positions presented to me, the voter. I go into the polling booth and I push one or another button depending on which of those positions I want. That's a very limited form of democracy. A really meaningful democracy would mean that I play a role in forming those decisions and creating those positions, that those positions reflect my active, creative participation at not just me, but of course everyone. That would be real democracy.
That's not
We're very
happening.
far from that.
Yeah.
But we're even departing from the point where there is ratification. When you have stage-managed elections with the public relations industry determining what words come out of people's mouth, you in fact are going beyond to the point where we are, even the element of ratification is disappearing, because you don't expect the candidates to stand for anything. Candidates decide what to say on the basis of tests that determine what the effect will be across the population. somehow people don't see how profoundly contemptuous that is of democracy.
Contemptuous?
Yeah. Suppose I'm running for office, and I don't tell people what I think or what I'm going to do. I tell them what the pollsters have told me is going to get me elected. That's expressing utter contempt for the electorate. That's saying, okay, you people are going to have the chance to push your buttons, but once you're done, I'll do exactly what I intend, which is not what I'm telling you. See, if you express what you believe, you don't have to ask what the polls tell you. Then you express, you don't believe what the polls tell you. That's what you say. And in fact, the whole construction of our political system is increasingly moving towards a real articulated expression of contempt for the general population. And I think people understand it.
If you conduct polls to tell you what people want, and they tell you, are you not listening to the voice of the people?
Only if that changes your mind. But of course, the whole structure of the system is based on the assumption that that doesn't change your mind, it changes what you say.
So
in other words, a political figure is not testing the waters and saying, okay, that's what I believe. If we had that kind of a political figure, we wouldn't bother voting for him. He's not a barometer. The political figure represents something, is supported by certain interests, has certain commitments, and so on. And the political figure then comes before us and produces things which the pollsters tell him, or his advisors, on the average, will increase his chances of gaining office, after which he will follow his commitments, his interests, what is demanded of him by those who supported him, by those who provide him with resources, and so on. This has always, of course, been true, but what is interesting now is the extent to which it is recognized to be the democratic system. It is recognized that we don't care what we say. We don't express interest. What we do is reflect power. See, I think Reagan's a very interesting political figure, and I think in a way he may represent the future of where capitalist democracy is tending. He's a very natural kind of phenomenon in a capitalist democracy. In a capitalist democracy, you have the problem, and it is always perceived as a problem, that the general population has a method of participating in decision-making. They can participate in politics. The state is not capable of stopping them. You can't shut them up, you can't put them in jail, you can't keep them away from the polls, and so on. And it's striking that that has always been perceived as a problem to be overcome. It's what's called the crisis of democracy. Too many people organizing themselves to enter the public arena. That's a crisis. We have to overcome
According to a certain view.
It has always been understood by, I would say, even the mainstream of democratic theorists, that when the voice of the people is heard, you're in trouble. Because they're always going to make the wrong decisions. The stupid and ignorant masses, as they're called, are going to make the wrong decisions. So therefore, we have to have what Walter Lippmann, back in 1920 or so, called manufacture of consent. We have to ensure that actual decision-making, actual power is in the hands of what he called a specialized class, us smart guys, who are going to make the right decisions. And we've got to keep the general population marginalized because they're always going to make mistakes.
Marginalizing meaning? Reduce
them to apathy and obedience. Allow them to participate in the political system, but as consumers, not as true participants. That is, allow them a method for ratifying decisions that are made by others, but eliminate the methods by which they might first inform themselves, second organize, and third act in such a way as to really control decision-making. That is, the idea is our leaders control us, not we control them. Now that is a very widespread view from liberals to conservatives. And how do you achieve this? Well, there are a lot of ways of achieving it, but one of the ways of achieving it is by turning the elected offices into ceremonial positions. If you could get to the point where people would essentially vote for the Queen of England, and take it seriously, then you would have gone a long way towards marginalizing the public. And I think we've made a big step in that direction.
The presidency as ceremonial leader.
And see, that's why Reagan's so interesting, because, although a lot of intellectuals try to put the best face they can on it, the fact of the matter is, and most of the population knows, that Ronald Reagan had only the foggiest ideas of what the policies of his administration were. And in fact, nobody much cared. The Democrats were always surprised that he could get away with these incredible bloopers and crazy statements and so on.
The detachment of the decision.
And I think the reason is that much of the population understood very well that they were supporting someone like the Queen of England or the flag. The Queen of England opens Parliament by reading a political program, but nobody asks whether she understands it or does she believe it or anything like that.
Every book from within the Reagan administration, from the Stockman book to the Reagan book to the new book that's now on the newsstands, says that the president was detached from the decision.
I think more than detached. I think he doesn't know what it is, and I think much of the population understood it. Now, I think that explains the combination of moderate, not an enormous, but moderate popularity with opposition to the programs.
What do we do about it? I mean, I don't want to leave people in a wholly negative analysis, although I believe in facing reality.
For ordinary people, it's extremely hard, and that's why you need organization.